Welcome to another episode of The Axis, where we discuss everything Axiom and everything automotive. So, Mike, another buzzword, digital retailing. What's it mean to you?
I think digital retail is still finding its way in the F&I space, from the people inside the finance and insurance office to the process in which finance insurance products are presented in the digital retail sales road to the sale. But then all the people that supply and support the F&I perspective inside a car dealership environment, what does that mean to digital retailing? So there's a lot to talk about just related to F&I. I know most people talk about the lending side of it or the sales process to get people engaged, but what does it mean to F&I? I think that's a very interesting topic for the people that not only do that role within the dealership walls, but all the different vendors and suppliers that support that function as allied industry, bringing that to our traditional auto retailers.
So you mentioned the F&Is and way digital retailing plays into that. I mean, a lot of these solutions that are out there, unfortunately, everyone has a solution now, right? So it's even becoming more fragmented for the dealer to choose from. I mean, we're staring down the face of mandates coming from OEMs. I hear all the rumors about that. But why is it that when we get to F&I or the actual transaction purchase, it stops? So we get the consumer into the funnel. We all know that they want to buy that way. But what is it about F&I that prevents us from giving the full stack solution? Is there limitations on product, laws, anything? What is it that causes people to stop at F&I and make the consumer still come into the dealership or go through the F&I process?
I think in F&I related portion of the transaction in digital retail for automotive, I think most people are challenged and concerned with the compliance of that, fraud, consumer fraud. When you're buying a item off of Amazon, you know that you are buying that particular good. When you're buying it, you select it, it's in inventory, you then move it to your cart. That cart then gives you the ability to ship it express. Do you want to pick it up? Do you want to protect it? Now there's so many companies that say for 2 more years that charges, another $75, right? In those transactions, it's a fairly easy process to create a digital protection F&I type transaction. I think because the state compliance, whether it's the disclosure, whether it's the banking relationship, I think those types of things are still yet to be determined. I've yet to see a platform that encompasses all of that quite yet. The other thing that I think is important that people need to consider is at what point during that digital roadmap or that digital transaction is F&I product being presented properly to the consumer? You look at the solutions that are outside a Carvana style, as you're going through that purchase process, selecting the car, trading yours in, selecting a bank payment that fits your needs, and then, oh, by the way, this car qualifies for protection products. And in that process, you have the ability to learn more about that particular protection product and add that as you transact through the process.
Do you think that Carvana, the way that they've implemented that is more forward-thinking, or do you think it's a result of the fact that they've never really had an F&I department to start with? Therefore, they're not dealing with all this legacy sales process, staffing, business model, business rules. Do you think that's what's preventing people from F&I? Because as you sit here and say compliance, technology, consumer fraud, et cetera, what I hear from dealers is it's my last source of profitability. So could that be why they're reluctant to put F&I as part of the digital retailing process? Because you and I agree that you would probably be more profitable if you integrated F&I into the digital retailing platform and you introduced it very early and very transparent, gave them clear options. Because our research shows, the surveys that we've done, everyone wants to buy protection products. All the demographics show that. All the results come back as, hey, if the product is transparent and it is applicable to what I'm doing and I feel it has perceived value, I'm going to purchase it.
Sure.
Why is that not getting pushed out to the dealer body? And if it is it a mixed signal, or is it a technology limitation where the digital retailing platforms possibly aren't integrated with an agent or a TPA?
Well, a lot there to unpackage, but I think the first, to answer your question, why are they successful in how they're delivering product and a vehicle transaction to the consumer. They didn't have a legacy sales approach to either sunset or withdraw from. So they had a digital retail approach. These are smart car people. They figured it out from learning how to sell pre-owned vehicles in other businesses. So they got that part of it. What they said is, let's keep this super simple. We're going to sell pre-owned vehicles to consumers in mass, online. We're going to make certain that they can learn as much as they can about that vehicle online. Amazing amount of pictures and video and disclosure. Then they said, we're going to allow you to trade your vehicle in with as much transparency and engagement as you're willing to give, and then bring them through that lending platform, just like LendingTree would or a mortgage application would. So they took these components and they said, let's build a process. Now, is it perfect? By no means. Is it advanced? Yes, it is. I think to answer your second question is, why is it not mainstream in our traditional auto retail? I think it will be at some point. And I would suggest that what the biggest challenge is for a car dealer today is there's not a training platform quite yet that allows an F&I dealer services professional to go in and counsel their dealers and their F&I managers and specialists in the dealership yet, that says, okay, look, on your traditional retail customers coming through the front door, here's your process, right? This is how you're going to disclose and promote and market product. But in consumer transactions that are digital, upstream, closer to the consumer before they literally start to engage a person, there's a different approach. One of the things we're always guilty of in our industry is one-size-fits-all approach, whether we're selling products on the service drive, whether we're trying to direct market a product to a consumer over the phone. We've done that in F&I, and it's a one-size-fits-all, and it takes a long time for us to shift to make the right product transaction more sustainable. But we're in an environment, a digital age, where people can buy and have demonstrated that they will buy anything online. If there's enough disclosure, you can buy a private island, for crying out loud, a full-blown real estate transaction online from around the world and never leave your home. So why couldn't we buy and purchase an automobile in the same transaction? I think income preservation perception, and I use that word perception, is a problem we need to overcome, because you brought up a good point. I think there's this fear that if we put it all online, no one's going to buy anything, which obviously takes income away from the dealership. I think they also believe if there's no one in the sales control process, income will diminish. And the reality is, when you look at some of these online retail platforms, whether it's not only in automotive, if it's in power sports, if it's in marine engines, if it's in any of those types of goods and services, high-end technology, people will actually procure protection products at an average of 65% or higher, all by their own behest, because they believe in the value of what was described to them. And the perception is, hey, you have the best availability to product and coverage now before you get into the dealership, or even post-transaction, you have the better solution. So wrap it all into your payment, come into the store, and have a great consumer experience. So I think we need to do a better job as suppliers and vendors, starting to get our F&I managers into the process sooner. What I always use as an analogy to people is the travel agent industry in the 90s and early 2000s was the only way you could buy travel. You wanted to buy an airline ticket, had to call a travel agent. You wanted to book a cruise, had to call a travel agent. And that was the only pathway to going on a packaged vacation. Today, 90% of the travel is booked online, completely and utterly end-to-end without a human interaction. Now, ironically, we use travel agents when we want a boutique experience or a carefree white glove service, right? So now we're bringing the travel agents in smaller populations as an industry, but now they're getting a premium for being able to drive not only a digital transaction to their consumer, but also a white glove approach. And that's really where I think auto dealers can kind of look at being part of how digital transformation becomes another revenue stream to what it is they do on a face-to-face transaction. Digital retail can now be something that they're part of and how that happens. Because if the answer is we're just going to just not address it, the consumers will dictate how we transact going forward. Every business in retail is being affected currently because of the lack of motivation and engagement. So I would say the sooner we get involved and we start building a separate process for digital retailing, as well as the traditional face-to-face, it's a great complement within an auto dealer environment.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned something there that you can buy protection products on high-end electronics, just about anything online. And if you think back, that's still relatively new in the life cycle of online retailing. I mean, 4 or 5 years ago when you were buying airline tickets, you weren't buying an Allianz product to back out if you had to change your flight. That's something that's relatively new. Apple Care, recent product, tremendous success. And they're really expanding how they offer that out to consumers. So do you think in automotive, I'll ask this to Sergey, so do you think in automotive, because our retailing stack is so fragmented, and there are so many different vendors that do something specific in automotive, inventory listing, desking, menuing, product, administration, all of it. Is it because we have so many players involved in our retail stack that it makes it difficult from a technology standpoint to integrate with digital retailing into the traditional sales process? Like, what are your thoughts? Because I don't ever hear the dealer talk about technology, but I hear the retailing platforms mention it. They always talk about you have to integrate there, you have to get a pull from there, you have to do an API fee here, you have to push there. What is it like to try to build one of these platforms in the ecosystem that we have?
Yeah, well, it's a great point. I think fragmentation has something to do with it, but I'm not certain that that's the major factor. I think it goes back to the perception on the dealer side that this somehow might threaten their current sales channel that they're focusing on. And digital retailing is all about customer and customer experience. That's where focus is. Customers are empowered today, and in every industry, whether it's travel, whether it's investing online, whether it's getting your groceries delivered to you or ordering something from a restaurant that can be delivered to you. So across all industries, we see that customer wants to be in the driving seat. So customer is definitely ready. It's those intermediaries, so to speak, whether it's a travel agent or a brokerage firm or a dealer in this case, where that change, I guess, needs to happen, and that's where the perception problem might exist.
So the technology exists now where we could do F&I, traditional F&I type menu, desking, presenting online, but it's just not occurring because you don't think that the retailers, the dealers themselves, are ready for that yet.
They're ready, but they might not know or think that they're ready for it. So,
I would add the process, right? At the end of the day, we've all been trained traditionally how to present end-to-end with full disclosure and to make certain that everybody understands what their vehicle qualifies for, what they as a buyer qualify for in the F&I transaction, right? I mean, we have amazing amount of professional organizations delivering that training day over day inside a car dealership. You've got great professionals in the F&I industry that are delivering and executing on that every single day, keeping their dealer compliant in the transaction. And that's all to protect the consumer in that transaction. But at the end of the day, the consumers are saying, gosh, I really wish I could do a lot of this upstream, upcycle, closer before I come in. And this is where I go back to all the time when I'm kind of talking through this with industry professionals. We should find a way to build a hybrid approach. It doesn't mean that it has to be full digital. Hey, this is the only way you're going to sell cars in the future, because that's one end of the spectrum. And the other spectrum is, I'm going to put my head in the sand because this won't last. That is absolutely not going to be the case. I think the idea of building a hybrid approach and let our retail F&I people within the car dealership environment be part of that transaction now, there's a couple things that we're going to do. We're going to see income preservation, not only at the F&I manager level, but at the store level. But you're going to deliver on a hybrid experience to the consumer that, even if it's modified smallly in the idea that I saved an extra hour by having a lot of this stuff presented to me upstream during the BDC process. And then when I arrived at the dealership, I had an appointment and I was in and out in 30 minutes because the customer said, I already want to add the service contract and the tire and wheel product before they got there, and the gap insurance. And so now everything's loaded. That customer comes in. The experience is shorter. They're spending more time in the dealership learning about their brand new sophisticated automobile, and now their CSI experience when they're surveyed is going to be like, how was your experience? It was the best experience I've ever had. I was in there for the shortest amount of time doing stuff that I think what they call the friction, the most friction in the transaction is waiting and getting in and then getting through that process. You're removing or reducing that friction. And I think what you end up giving and delivering is a compliant hybrid approach until maybe the consumer platforms deliver a complete end-to-end solution. And I think we're ways away from that being the ultimate every single day transaction because people still want to be engaged. But let's use technology. Let's use a presentation platform. Let's use a digital retail platform that you can actually actively share a hybrid delivery experience.
Well, let's close on that. So this is what I see in automotive, right? It's we take technology that is available to us, and we try to take that technology and leverage that against the consumer to make their behavior fit our sales process. So when the internet first came out online, people were like, there goes our profit, don't put prices online. So we had stupid things like click here for best price, e-price, all of these different things. Anything to make a consumer fill out a form so we can get their phone number or their email, right? And what we do, call them. That's the last thing they wanted to do. Now, good luck trying to get a form fill from any consumer on an automotive website. We all know that. The leads game is done. So what does everybody do? Oh, we're going to switch to digital retailing. We're going to do it this way. I feel like if we keep using technology to try to mold the customer to fit our sales process instead of meeting the wants and needs of the consumers, we're going to get left behind. I mean, do you see a point where if dealers don't adapt to the traditional digital or to the new way that consumers are shopping or want to buy a vehicle, that an outside force such as an Amazon or another player that has yet to be identified comes in and takes over the last part of the retail, the distribution part of it from the manufacturer? What do you guys think?
I think if we look at the malls, right, and that's a great example, when malls were late to react how customer wants to buy things, we now see malls that are empty and consumers buying everything online. So consumer, I guess, wins at the end. So
yeah, but if you look at malls, great example, malls. Some retailers are still in those malls, but they've completely changed their business model. They have fewer items in the store, right? If you do like something, then they can ship it to you right there. You can pick it up in the store. They'll call another store and have it shipped to your house. They don't have to carry these large inventories anymore. And if the only way you're going to go to that mall is if the experience is there, you're not going to go to the mall and walk up and down and looking for the best price because you already know that if you go to a store, this is how the pricing works. They're being transparent about it. How do we get dealers to understand that they can be this type of retailer? The technology exists. You said it yourself. Mm-hmm. Mike knows that we can make a hybrid approach and make it work with the sales process we have now. What is it going to take for us to finally nail this down where dealers say, hey, listen, you know what? I'm in the transportation business and I sell cars online. I'm willing to embrace everything I can to expand my marketplace, maintain my revenue model, and be successful at retailing vehicles.
I think it's fair. I think people need to look at the shift. There's a legitimate shift here in how consumers buy anything in this world. And the sooner you are truly humbled by the idea that the way we've always done it isn't the way you're going to do it in the future, I think the sooner you recognize that and say, okay, maybe I can't shift overnight and go from the traditional all the way to digital, but let me be part of the process over the next few years as it becomes marshaled in or mandated by OEMs, banks, regulation and compliance, all the things that still have yet to be really kind of roadmapped as absolute. I think you need to figure out a way to modify it. One of the things most people don't realize is that you might be able to sell maybe less product per transaction, but more products more products in general, because people felt that process was more subtle to their buying experience. We're selling sophisticated high-end technology machines that happen to be drivable. Mm-hmm. That's what I tell people all the time. When you buy a service contract in the United States today, you're not buying it for the mechanical failure aspects in large majority anymore. You're buying it to protect the technology facets that control the mechanical. They have a higher likelihood of failure. So as an example, using AppleCare, the AppleCare has a 70% acceptance rate across one of the highest rated consumer brands in the globe. and its majority of their products are bought online, or if you go into an Apple store, what is the first thing the retail people say inside the store? Let's go to an iPad and order everything, and it'll come out of the back. So they've changed the experience even in the store. But you know what happens? Consumers are still accepting AppleCare in that face-to-face hybrid approach. So, there's demonstrations throughout all aspects of retail where this hybrid approach is more than accepted. If you can create less friction, you can create the appearance of empathy because you're saying, you know what, I recognize, let's just be honest, as an industry, I recognize that a 4-hour transaction is horrible.
Sure.
It's a horrible way to treat you. But at the end of the day, if I'm able to, make that a smaller window of time dedicated to purchasing something, but I also get the same value and the opportunity, I'm willing to go through that process. And I think we need to educate our dealers and the professionals inside those organizations on how to do it. And that might mean that instead of the F&I person, it might mean that there's a dedicated person in the BDC center that's technically and professionally trained to communicate product upstream. And that's a shift from today's current process.
Mike, good point. You mentioned AppleCare, and we talk about that one often. I mean, the ease of buying AppleCare, even post-transaction, is really incredible what they've done with that. They've leveraged their technology platform and protection products and made it just common sense to buy a protection product for a cell phone. I mean, we all broken a cell phone before, and we know how much it is to get it fixed. Okay, Sergey, so we got Mike's take on what is going to be next here in automotive and how do we get over the threshold of real digital retailing. Now, I know a lot about your background. You've seen large companies be able to shift and offer goods and services completely online, large corporations, financial corporations, et cetera. What do you see, or what do you think is going to be necessary? What's going to be the tipping point here in automotive where everyone's going to embrace this technology, or they're not going to be in the business anymore?
I think what's lacking in the industry at the moment is the integration between different players in the market. It's clear that we are about to experience tremendous or tectonic shifts in the automotive industry. It's really just a matter of time that digital transformation or revolution is about to take off. And that could really benefit all the players, all the stakeholders of this market. One of the ways to accomplish that would be to find ways to work together to cross-pollinate and benefit from each other's specializations and maybe products. And that might mean an emergence of a certain kind of ecosystem that will allow for that to happen and take place, to make it easier for everybody. And that ecosystem would be enabled by technologies that are emerging and have already emerged, such as big data, blockchain, and so on, artificial intelligence. All those things, all those technologies will play a tremendous role in what's to come in the automotive, finance, and insurance space.
Yeah, I mean, so here in automotive, and I know our stack is really fragmented because I think we have a lot of people that are almost like have this protectionism mentality, right? Yeah. I do PPC well, but then I can also build websites. Now that I've built websites, I'm also going to sell you a CRM. So I'm trying to get this vertical integration, if you will, of a product suite from all one company. Now you step outside of automotive and you go to digital marketing, for example. Everybody plays nicely inside the stack with their specialty, right? So do you think that in the future, to get digital retailing the way it is, we're going to have to come to some sort of standardization, much like the App Store, SDK policies, and everything else that's in place to got uniformity across the retail marketplace online? Is that going to have to come to automotive? Do you see that ever happening?
Yes, absolutely. And it's clear if we look at the mobile technology, we see that there are two platforms that it's iOS and Android. Even though Microsoft tried to play a role in that, we see two standards that everybody follows. 99% of the market is split between those two platforms. So there will be maybe one, maybe two, it's hard to say, but there will be a standardization to enable for that integration to come to life, to come to fruition. Because if everything is in silos, so to speak, it's very difficult to work together. So standardizing would be a way to get beyond this silo approach.
Now, the $1 million question for all of us here at this table is, who's going to lead that? Will it be manufacturers, or is it going to be somebody from the outside? And I don't want to say the A word. Is it going to be somebody like that forces us to standardize so we can compete against them as retailers at the tier 3 level? Or is this going to be something that's brought up by the manufacturers and pushed down?
Look, the biggest challenge in big corporations is not very many at all allow for innovation. There's no innovation departments in many corporations, and we're in the finance industry. We are traditional businesses. We're balance sheet driven, financial driven, and it doesn't matter where you are in the sector. Those types of decisions are precedent before innovation. It's going to take people either to create this open source environment of collaboration so that you can see different companies start building around features that we can all standardize and be part of this collaboration and integration, or it's going to take a company that's willing to dedicate an extreme amount of resource to innovation and, more importantly, execution on those solutions. After that's completed, if you have an MVP, prototype of a new solution, you're then going to have to partner with an innovative dealer who's willing to say, you know what, I want this. Somebody please bring this to me. And I can tell you now that there are dealers that want this. They've asked for it, but they're being clouded by what's truly available in technology that's being promoted to them today. And then secondly, there's this enormous ecosystem of F&I dealer service professionals that are marshaling and training and helping grow this. They need to adapt this new mentality. It's not just, I can improve your PVR. It's, now I can help you transform, Mr. Dealer, to be part of the next generation of auto retailing. But they're going to have to teach digital retailing. And for them to do that, they got to make certain there's a tool that can help them do that, because the credibility of what they're teaching is paramount. So I think the ability to think differently, you have to have a company willing to innovate, but more importantly, execute and bring this to the entire automotive sector with a humbled approach, as opposed to this, it's all mine and I'm going to keep it behind closed doors. And it's a shift. We've got to start thinking like other industries who have benefited it tremendously by being able to allow others, competitors, to have access to the same marketplace. I mean, think, if you just remove technology from this conversation, there's over 100 administrators bringing F&I products to dealers throughout the entire North America. Some may argue that's 150. So why is it that 150 like companies can bring a product to an industry and still survive? That's my point, right? So how many technology companies could potentially be part of this ecosystem if we could make it optimized and efficient? And that's truly what we're trying to do. If we can become optimized and efficient in what it is we sell and how we sell, the consumer experience will be vastly affected and different. And again, the perception of us losing income or revenue because we're shifting away from this one-on-one manual approach, I think we need to build confidence that that's not true. And if we're part of the equation, this is what I always tell people, we can bring industry professionals to the table as part of the equation, as opposed to, here's your new process. Oh, by the way, you're the new travel agent. Your services are no longer needed. And we don't want to see an industry that we've relied on for so many years be partialized that way.
Yeah, no, I happen to agree with you. And I believe that digital retailing, full stack digital retailing, will be here sooner than later. And I think that the consumer is going to win, and I think that dealer profitability is going to return. So next week we can talk about something else. Thank you, Mike and Sergey. That was another episode of The Axis. Please click on the link below for more information.